Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another amazing and insightful podcast by aidbees. This is your host, Ashutosh, and it's Pride Month. And we are here with a very brilliant, very amazing queer content creator. We have Prarthana Prasad, the short haired brown queer. I'm sure all of you know her. I'm sure she has a big ass following, but we're going to talk about a lot, many things today on queer issues, on inclusivity, on concerns that also come in important for Pride Month and for the community at large. Prathna, welcome to aidbees. We're really excited to host you today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Lovely. Before we move on to the discussion, because we also want to talk about a lot many experiences, a lot many things, I would just give like a quick introduction to Prathna. Prathana Prasad is the winner of the Editors Panel 2023 Cosmopolitan LGBTQIA plus Voice of the Year. She has 55.2 thousand followers on Instagram. Great numbers. And I'm really, truly impressed and inspired. And also over 7,200 followers and subscribers on YouTube. Her ideas and her insights and what I could really gauge from the profile also, because I've been going through, I've been reading about you, Pratna. And you say that you want to make the Indian gay content that you want to see. So let's kick off the conversation essentially with that, because I'm really intrigued by what is this Indian gay content that you want to see.
I think this is a personal struggle that I had. For the first few years when I came out, I grew up in a generation where I got to use the internet as a part of my coming out process. So a lot of the questions I had, a lot of the information I wanted, I got it through the internet. And so, the sort of people that I was seeing who were speaking out about these issues were generally living in places very different from ours. Like they were living in like the US, the UK, Australia, places like that. And for the first few years, I was really happy. I was really happy that I found other lesbians, other queer women, other LGBTQI folks speaking about their experiences. And I was glad to know that I wasn't alone. But as time passed, I think it started occurring to me how often and how almost exclusively all these folks were, a different skin tone than me. They were living in a different country than me. They were living in a completely different society than I ever maybe would.
Right.
And that's when this sort of obsession got created, where I was like, I want to find just one Indian person talking about their experiences as a queer individual who still lives in India. And you would not believe how long it took me to even find one or two people that actually fell into that categorization. And I would say I found after like 1 or 2 years of some intense Google searching and intense YouTubing, probably maybe a handful of people who actually fit into that category. And I realized this amazing space was being created online. And, a lot of Indians were getting on a lot of these platforms. But once again, it was a situation where queer folks were left out of the conversation again. So I think their obsession is about capturing the unique Indianness of a queer experience was yeah, something that was very exciting to me. And I finally thought, okay, maybe I should try my hand at it. And that's why I started making the kind of content that I do.
It's actually very impressive because I think largely as a reference point for the queer community, there's a lot of white content. Of course, there's lot of
Yeah.
content from the West or even from Europe, but also it's so important to go into the intersections of it all. It's so important to look at, okay, what is my personal self feeling? And I think a lot many Indians or all your followers that have been there have been able to, like people from the queer community specifically, have been able to relate to and feel more included after watching your content, and that's really great. Which also kind of brings me to uh, like like on asking of your personal experiences about inclusivity, since we are talking about pride, we are talking about inclusivity. What are your personal experiences in the lack of inclusivity, and what have you felt so far? Have you faced anything like that?
I think, it's such a given truth that most spaces and institutions are not going to be inclusive to the LGBTQI community, that sometimes I find it hard to even comment on my experiences about that lack of inclusivity because I've not really experienced anything else usually.
Right.
So, like, uh, like for example, recently I conducted an event at the Museum of Art and Photography in Bangalore, and they're like a very queer friendly space. Like I think they go beyond queer friendly and just start like queer loving, because like a lot of their senior management also identifies part of the LGBTQI community. So you go into the space and like there are like trans inclusive washrooms on like every floor. There's so much enthusiasm to create queer spaces. There's so much like joy at having queer people be a part of their gallery. And honestly, I was so shocked the entire time because I was like, they're being so nice to us. This is so weird. Like, this is not normal. Like, so I think that is what the lack of inclusivity has done to me. It has almost fried a part of my brain and made something that might be considered just normal or maybe just even the bare minimum seem like this amazing gift. And honestly, yeah, the experiences I have about a lack of inclusivity can range back from like the first day of school when, because of the idea of gendered uniforms, I had to wear a very uncomfortable set of clothing for like 12 years of my life. And no one would give me the time of day when I complained that I feel so uncomfortable wearing this. They just thought I was a dumb kid having a dumb problem and I should shut up and get over it. And I did shut up and get over it. And I think uh it's it's the case for a lot of queer people. Like we are told a lot of our wants, a lot of our preferences, a lot of our innate mannerisms are just incorrect, and that we really need to shut up and get over it. And so yeah, that lack of inclusivity I think was prevalent in my schooling, it was prevalent in my college days, and I'm sure it would have been prevalent in any corporate space had I gotten a job in any of them. But it's definitely something that I think maybe we are seeing some improvements in. But I think a lot of queer people, especially like slightly older queer people, we are still quite, we have like a long way to go in understanding what any of that inclusivity would actually look like for us on a day-to-day basis, because it's very minimal in most spaces.
Quite right. So I think because those reservations have always existed so far. The the idea that oh this is not maybe made for you as a queer person, or this is
Mm-hmm.
not maybe made for you as I mean personally also I can count multiple times where I was told not to wear a specific color just because maybe I look too gay or too feminine in it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what who I am, and that's how I express myself. But yeah, I mean, these experiences have, I think, occurred in all of our lives time and again, point and
Yeah.
again.
Mm-hmm.
So this is something that also brings me to thinking about stereotypes, thinking about what do you call when you talk of inclusivity, because
Mm-hmm.
we are largely talking about whose pride it is and who are you being inclusive to that largely, right?
Mm-hmm.
In that sense, when you think of stereotypes, maybe like flamboyance, maybe like femininity,
Mm-hmm.
or even like being a tomboy, so to speak,
Mm-hmm.
as you go ahead,
Mm-hmm.
right? Do you think that certain stereotypes often set up a structure, or
Mm-hmm.
like they often build structures to navigate around queer issues or inclusive issues?
I think honestly, stereotypes are a blessing and a curse. Like in a way, it's a blessing because at least because of this stereotype that exists about queer people, sometimes at least we're able to recognize each other some of the time, because there is a little bit of truth to every stereotype,
Right,
because that's probably where it came from. The problem arises when these stereotypes are used to harm people and
right,
when they're used to keep people out. Like, there's also the flip side where sometimes folks are told, hey, you're not queer enough. Like, you're not flamboyant enough to be queer, or you're not like tomboyish enough to be queer, you're not trans enough to be trans. It's just there's something or the other that's said to keep people out. So they work in a lot of different odd ways, stereotypes. And I think definitely it is also like a huge issue outside of, I think stereotypes exist as an issue within the queer community itself and within, us queer folks trying to navigate the world outside. And it's something that is so inherent. Like even with me, like I would really like to shed some of my stereotypes, because even to this day, if I see like a short-haired woman, my first assumption is she's probably queer, and half of it is wishful thinking, and half of it is wishing that I have that in common with this person, and it's probably not true a lot of the time. And I feel like, it's a very odd relation I have with the lesbian stereotype, because to be quite honest, I'm a walking, talking lesbian stereotype. Like I have the short hair and I wear the masculine clothes, and like, everyone is going to perceive me as the top in the relationship. Like, I don't even know what I can say about stereotypes anymore because I feel
Right.
like they apply to me too much. So it is a love-hate relationship I have with it.
Yeah, I think kind of similar because again the gay boy, long hair, uh, nail paints, all
Yeah.
of that just comes in one after the other.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody was asking me because I, of course, gymming or maybe things like that are also such effective stereotypes that, oh, you go to build a muscle, are you even gay because you are fully
Mm-hmm.
going all masculine and everything? And that's where it also comes in my brain that, okay, maybe these are created for us to claim what
Mm-hmm.
we are, who we are, but rather than claiming, it also has a lot of loop side where
Yeah.
we're seen from just those particular perspectives
Yeah, that's
of
true.
femininity, of flamboyance, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure like a lot of us do feel this certain way where we want to use or we want to challenge that stereotype, but it is in one way or the other coming to define us.
It is. Yeah, it is coming. In a way, it's a comfort. Like, okay, this does define us, but it's such a limitation because so many of, especially the younger queer folks that I speak to through my page, like one of their main issues is not feeling queer enough. And it's something that I didn't really feel, maybe because I didn't grow up in that age of social media where I had so much room to compare myself to anybody. But I mean, these younger people, they do. And a lot of them are like, oh, I'm not queer enough, like I don't look gay enough, I don't feel non-binary enough. And it's such a unique problem, I feel, that this younger generation does have. And yeah, I think that's where the stereotypes I really see coming to harm the community within themselves.
Right. And then talking for the younger generation or talking of these stereotypes, also the question of then like acceptance comes in. Of what scale is your acceptance? Because when we are sitting here, we are two urban queer people with our experiences of the urbanity of it all. There's somebody maybe sitting back in a village, not maybe, not maybe even realizing that this is queer or not.
Yeah.
And when they navigate through their identity, it's hard to even accept oneself as someone who's experienced this in the past. I can say this that I had a hard time accepting myself, even as a child. Uh, do you think there exists some challenges with regards to this sort of an acceptance with the self or even with the society? And what
Mhm.
are those challenges according to you?
Like with acceptance in general.
In general, acceptance of the identity or the queerness of it all,
Hmm.
or the fact that okay, there is something different going on, and how do I normalize it in my brain?
Hmm. I think I really liked how you added that point of accepting it within one's own self, like for one's own self. I think that is honestly one of the biggest challenges because I feel like, to be honest, if you try to come out to someone and your acceptance for your own self is still sort of half baked and you're not completely 100% sure of yourself, I feel like it leaves a lot of room for whoever that you are coming out to and asking acceptance of to sort of attack you for it, or to sort of tell you that it's a phase, or to sort of point out like, hey, you're not even so sure about it, like I'm sure you're just going through this confused phase, like just let it go. And I feel like that causes so much more confusion within the person themselves, and they start to demean their own ideas and they start to sort of talk down to themselves. And I think that lack of surety about one's own identity, that lack of like concrete, it's difficult because I mean, to begin with, all of these identities are extremely fluid and they're extremely like transient a lot of the times. And it's something that a lot of us grow into as time passes. And I think the combination of those factors can make self acceptance quite difficult. And I feel like without self acceptance, it's very hard to get acceptance from the people around you. Because I mean, people are not jumping up and down to welcome you into their arms as their newly minted queer son or daughter or anything like that. Like, they're not excited to do that. So it takes a bit of convincing from most of our ends usually to get that acceptance from like close family and friends. And I think without that self acceptance, it's usually like an even more difficult thing to achieve. So I feel like, it comes down to a question: to get self acceptance, you need to have self awareness.
Right.
And that is sort of ends up being the solution to most of life's problems. Like, you have enough self awareness, you can sort of get through anything. And same goes for, I think, coming into acceptance for yourself. If you're more aware of it, probably going to get more acceptance from yourself.
It really makes me curious to now ask about your journey, of course, of that sort of self-awareness and self-acceptance. When did it all begin? Like when you realize that okay,
Hmm.
there's something regarding my identity I need to be aware of.
Yeah, I think it was at quite a young age, at least in terms of because of the way I express my gender. I express my gender in a way that's very at odds with my biological gender. So I have a very stereotypically masculine way of expressing myself. And that's always been the case. Like ever since I was old enough to perceive clothing, I have known that I wanted whatever was in the boys section. And I don't know why, but I know that it's always been true about me. And so I was always a bit of an outcast. I was always the weird girl that looked like a boy, or the weird boy that had a girl's name. I don't know how people were perceiving me at some points. And kids are very blunt. And like I think to this day and age, I have a bit of a dislike for children around the age of 6, because I think that's when I had to start interacting with children who would constantly be like, "Oh, Prathana is a boy, Prathana is a boy." And I found it very weird. I think it made me really hate the idea of gender. It really made me hate my own gender for a very, very long time, because I felt like none of the expectations that came with my gender came naturally to me at all. And so I had already felt a lot of difference from my peers while growing up. So when I started to realize that, okay, something about my sexuality is also off, and like, I am crushing on people that I should not be crushing on, it sort of felt like the next natural step to take in who I was. Like I was not surprised that this also was different about me. It honestly made a little bit more sense. And I think that was when I was around 13 or 14. Like I had a crush on like a very close friend of mine from school. And this is the most stereotypical story you will hear that any lesbian or queer woman has while coming out. I had a crush on my best friend. And yeah, I think I spent like a good 3 or 4 years keeping that information to myself. And I did not feel comfortable sharing it with anybody because I was very scared of the kind of reaction I would get. And also, I think I was in the process of accepting it for myself. Like, I was extremely sure of my identity because I had spent so much time thinking about it alone in my room, like days and days. So, yeah, I think that clarity really helped me in certain parts of my coming out process. Like when I came out to my mother for the first time, I got a very stereotypical response, which is her trying to be in denial about it. It is her saying that, okay, you're too young to know these things about yourself. It is her saying things like, okay, it's a phase and like, you'll get over it.
Right.
But at that time, I had already spent so much time with my own knowledge that I am this person. So I think that helped me get through that sort of reaction from her. So yeah.
Right. And it's also because the self-awareness bit for Indian queer specifically, let's
Mm-hmm.
contextualize it to India. It's also very, I have seen this personally around me that uh, often when children are even like behaving differently from what the conventional way of being a
Mm-hmm.
child is, they're often outcasted. Or they're often made to feel that yeah, there's something that's different with you, but you were just gonna live with it. There's no context or no
Mm-hmm.
education or no
Yeah.
explanation that's given to them.
Yeah.
Like as you said, like having a crush probably in school, or like having someone you like, or just wanting to maybe do things that your gender
Mm-hmm.
identity doesn't conventionally have. Like for example, in my childhood, I would
Mm-hmm.
use my mom's dupattas
Mm-hmm.
as a sari and I'll drape it around me
Mm-hmm.
and like behave like I like play teacher.
Mm-hmm.
That nobody told me that okay, it probably could be that you're queer, or there was no self-awareness back when, like back when
Yeah.
we were children. uh, in that sense it was just discarded as perhaps a joke,
Yeah.
or as something that okay, it's just your age to play around, so you're playing around.
Mm-hmm.
And now in retrospect, when you look at it, it's really opening up the spectrum of so many things, that okay, this is also my identity. And as you said, there are days when you feel certain ways, there are days
Mm-hmm.
when you feel certain ways, and there are multiple ways to actually
Mm-hmm.
express and feel that identity, right?
Yeah.
um dragging this conversation back to social media, let's talk
Mm-hmm.
about social media because I really am excited to discuss
Mm-hmm.
various prospects of
Mm-hmm.
followers, content creation, because both of us come from content. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm really looking forward to that.
Mm-hmm.
There's always a certain way of image creation on social media. I think both of us agree to that. So
Mm-hmm.
if short-haired brown queer is an image that's
Mm-hmm.
also been created out of certain sort of audiences and out of certain
Mm-hmm.
sort of content that's coming out.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think this sort of image creation works against or for the kind of spectrum that we're talking about, or for the kind of politics that we're talking?
I need a little bit more clarity on what you mean, like by the spectrum or the
In this,
politics of it.
in the sense that you see people doing great and good, you see people having an image on
Mm-hmm.
social media. Let's say if I'm on social media, I have a particular image that people are looking at or people are
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
that that need not to be the complete
Yeah.
story of it all.
Mm-hmm.
Except people still make opinions about it.
Mm-hmm.
People still would define or categorize my
Mm-hmm.
gayness or my
Mm-hmm.
queerness depending on that image. So,
Mm-hmm.
what do you think about that particular navigation? Does it help the queer movement or does it work against the queer movement in that sense?
I think it helps because I mean, unless you're creating that image or that profile, I mean, there's no other way to get your message across. I think personally, for me, my intention was to, like, even with the username, like it's a very long, clumpy username, if you ask me. Like, I don't particularly think it was a stroke of creative genius or anything. But I think my idea was I wanted it to be so clear about what it was representing. I wanted it to be Indian and I wanted it to be gay. I didn't want there to be any question on whether or not I am gay. Like, I wanted anyone with even one glance to know, okay, this person is definitely gay. They're not just making gay jokes. They're not just talking about it. They're just not just an ally. They're not going to wake up the next morning and say, oh no, guys, you misunderstood. I was cis all along. I was straight all along. Like, none of that is going to happen. Like, I wanted it to be very obviously gay and I wanted it to have like an element of being Indian also. So I think that's why I came up with that username. I think it is definitely a large part of me. I feel like it is authentically me, whatever I'm putting on the internet, but it's only a small part of who I am. Like, it's only the gay part. And yeah, the gay part is a pretty big part, but it is only the gay part. And I think I strive for that. I strive for it to be only the gay part because in a way it's because I don't want to confuse my audience. I don't want my audience to have to sit through looking at my breakfast. I don't want my audience to ever think that I'm living this great amazing life, because to be honest, I'm not. I'm just making videos on and putting it on the internet. That's the only thing maybe about my life that's a little bit different than anyone else's. So I never wanted it to be like the sort of page where I go and share my travel stories on, or where I go and share like my family's birthday pictures on. Like, I didn't want any of that to happen. I wanted it to be just for the gay part of who I am. And I wanted it to resonate with LGBTQI audience members. I think like, I'm really happy I have the number of followers I do, but I honestly believe that if I diversified my content and I made it just a little bit gay and I made it a little bit more heterosexual pandering, a little bit more comfortable for majority audiences to understand, it would be bigger. My reach, my everything would be bigger, but I don't want it. I want it to be just for the LGBTQI community. So in a way, it's like both a weakness and a strength. And
And yeah,
yeah,
please.
yeah, that's about it. It is very intentionally made in a way that I only appeal to queer people, and very intentionally those queer people get what they're coming for. They get queer content. They don't have to worry about like having to see me as like an influencer or something like that, because I don't want to be that person. So yeah, that's
Right.
about
And
it.
it's also, I think that completely resonates with the sort of the catchiness that it has in it. But also with the catchiness comes a lot of curiosity, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Because when for my personal experience, when I first came across your account, I think just some years back, and
Mm-hmm.
I really found it to be hopeful in the sense of that relatability that you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, yeah, like surely that sort of the image creation also lends its hand to create like
Mm-hmm.
relatability, right?
Yeah.
Being relevant to who you are speaking to. in this case, the young queers or the people who are watching your content, or
Mhm.
maybe the older
Mhm.
people of the community, or
Mhm.
largely the heterosexual community as well. But
Mhm.
who you're appealing to is also very, very important. And very impressed to look at all the kind of content that you do, honestly,
Thank
especially like revolving around Indian queers,
you.
which again brings me to like another thought of
Mhm.
what's going on around the Indian queers. Let's like literally let's discuss what's going on
Sure.
with the Indian queers
Mhm.
in that sense. Um, Something that we at aidbees obviously look a lot at is the idea of spreading kindness and
Mhm.
how kindness is being practiced or
Mhm.
is being at least circulated
Mhm.
through our communities, right?
Mhm.
And it could be from actions, it could be from words, it could also be from gestures, so to speak.
Mhm.
But uh, oftentimes, I have seen this personally, and this could just be a little out of the blue as well. But within the community itself, there is such a dearth of kindness. Like within the community itself, there
Yeah.
is so much lack of kindness
Yeah.
that I can't just explain it. What do you have to say on that? Like, are there ways that you can
Mhm.
practice it, or is there some personal experience that's coming behind not being kind? I don't
Mhm.
know. Where is this going according to you?
I think you're really right in whatever you've perceived, because I have perceived the same thing a lot of the time. I think I truly, like, when I was around maybe 20 or 21 when I finally walked into a queer space. Like, it took me a while to get there.
Yeah,
And when I walked in, like, as with a lot of other younger queer folks, I imagined that I would walk in and magically leave with a group of friends. Like, I would suddenly just have like my best friends, and I would suddenly love being around people, because surely the reason I hated people till now was because they were all like cis and heterosexual. And the
yeah,
minute I was in a room with like-minded people, like, I'd be like, yes, bestie, let's go. But it didn't work out that way, did it? It didn't work out that way at all. And I think it took me some time to come to terms with that experience. And I think it's because at the end of the day, queer, are just people. So they are horrible in all the ways that people are and can be. And I think that added life experiences that we have had, a lot of the times they're not enough to bring us together, because there is a lot more diversity to our life experiences than we would like to admit. And I think there is also there is a lot of like judginess and like classism and stuff that we see playing out in a lot of our pre-existing queer spaces, maybe because of the origin of those spaces, maybe because of the kind of people that have access to them. But it does exist in a lot of spaces, not all of them, but a lot of them do have it. And I think in that way, a lot of people are becoming disillusioned with it a little bit, because you're going there with the expectation of inclusivity, and when it's still not there, I think it hits harder, because you were expecting it, you were sure it's going to be there, and when it's still not there, you're like, okay, this is just sad. But I don't know if it's at the end of the day that queer people are slightly extra horrible. No, I don't think so. I think we're just horrible in the way that everyone else is also horrible. I mean, not everyone takes their queer experiences to be like this growing moment where I will suddenly be completely empathetic and truly loving and truly inclusive. It's hard to do that. So I think, yeah, that sort of problems do exist in a lot of these spaces.
so a little bit of kindness can really help to
Can go a long way. Yeah, definitely.
can really go a long way. Like just gestures of being kind and being accepting towards each other. That oh,
Mm-hmm.
like if I see you, yeah, you belong to my community, regardless of what filters we both have or what filters we both don't have.
Yeah.
So that 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 amount of kindness I think is required, and that's also something that we at our end try.
Mm-hmm.
We're a venture that works on spreading kindness through social intervention, through social
Mm-hmm.
impact. So we work
Mm-hmm.
with NGOs. At
Mm-hmm.
8Bs, we have over 75 NGOs
Mm-hmm.
working on 10 plus causes as
Mm-hmm.
per the United Nations goals. One of the causes out of those is also diversity and inclusion. It's LGBTQIA plus issues. So
Mm-hmm.
we have NGOs that work with us on our
Mm-hmm.
platform that are directly impacting these underprivileged queer
Mm-hmm.
people, trans people, gay people. They work with, you know, patients of HIV, or they work with people going through AIDS or other sort of issues that are
Mm-hmm.
health related concerns for the community. Um, this sort of world, in terms of social intervention, also creates specific impact, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, say, organizations that are outrightly working for queer people.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, how important do you think this sort of impact is? Because oftentimes it happens that you're looking at an organization's work,
Mm-hmm.
you're looking at how they're impacting lives, but of course, there's so much that they can do.
Mm-hmm.
So, how important is this social intervention or social impact for you on queers?
I think that it is one of the main points of creating positive impact within the community because especially when it comes to community building, when it comes to like creating like a shared pool of resources for the community, there is literally no other way to do that. And I think that is, in my very personal opinion, one of the main reasons why the LGBTQI community's movement in India is a little bit fragmented is because every organization or every, group of people that are trying to create an impact can create an impact only in one small portion within their area of work. Like if there's like, for example, Nas Foundation in Delhi, their impact is as far reaching as Delhi. And
That's
if you look at Humsafar Trust, their impact is as far reaching as Mumbai. And that's great because they become like pivotal points of help for, some folk within those particular areas. But I don't think there is an organization that has as yet grown to that sort of impact where you can say, okay, pan India, they are the people to go to. And I really wish we had that. I feel quite jealous sometimes of other countries that seem like they have that, like the Trevor Project in America or something like that. It seems like, with that sort of far-reaching impact, the visibility also grows a lot higher. And I would really hope that in the future that is something that we can see more of, as well as grassroots organizations within local places, helping people come to terms with these issues locally and with the kinds of resources that are available. But yeah, I feel like the organizational work is huge because I think that's what creates actual substantial change more than anything else.
that is very important. And as you mentioned, Humsafar Trust also, they are also a partner NGO on our platform. So
Okay, that's great.
yeah, there are also quite a lot many NGOs, but again, the the restriction of the demography always
Yeah,
still.
it's just such a huge country. It's so
Yeah,
hard to scale something in this, country.
and it's not even like there's just queers in maybe Bombay or maybe Delhi or maybe
Yeah,
one place or the other. It's
yeah.
everywhere, like
It's everywhere. It's like all
every,
of these small cities. Like every time I see like a smaller city starting up their Pride March, like recently I saw Guwahati Pride, I saw Manipur
right,
Pride, I saw things like I was so happy. I was so amazed almost. I saw an event happening in Siliguri for Pride, and I was like, that's
right,
really, really nice. And I think that's what creates a lot more impact as well. So it would be nice to see more of it.
right. And I mean, it has been a wonderful conversation. We'll
Hmm.
stop after this for a bit to just also chat more
Hmm.
after the recording ends. But it has been really a great time talking about so many concerns, so many issues. And of course, we are celebrating the Pride months.
Hmm.
And I personally believe, as a part of the community, that it's not just a month, but it's all
Hmm.
months. It's
Hmm.
24/7. It's at all
Hmm.
points.
Hmm.
Um, More than that, International Pride Day is approaching. So, of
Hmm.
course, there will be celebrations around this.
Hmm.
As we kind of conclude this discussion, what would be your top three pieces of advice to those young queer people watching this, to all your followers watching this uh, in the Pride Month?
Like when I first started like doing these sorts of interviews because of my page, whenever someone would ask me this question, I'd be like, me advice? I would never get advice. I'm so young myself. Why would I lecture people who are just like me? And as I've grown a little bit older and interacted with more and more queer people, I have so much advice to the point where I think I'm going to be annoying and sound like your father. So like it's a problem when people ask me this question. I don't know how to diplomatically answer it anymore. But I think the first thing I'd say is that your personal success should be separate from your your personal happiness should be separate from the idea of what is going on in the world. This sounds a bit almost selfish in today's day and age in the kind of climate we live in, but if you're going to get bogged down by every negative thing that happens across the world, you're never going to find personal happiness. And if you don't find personal happiness, you're never going to find the strength to actually fight for a cause you care about. So I think it is very important to separate our personal selves from what we see in the world. And I feel like that's becoming a more and more of a pressing issue for a lot of people, especially younger people. And I think since you asked me for three, I have two more.
Sorry
So
to put you on the spot, but we
no,
want to.
I'm very happy. You're doing this to your audience now. They're gonna have to sit through this. So the second thing that I'd like to say is that no matter how horrible of a thing that you think that you're going through, and that you are definitely going through, a lot of other people have also gone through similar things. This is not to say that your experience does not matter or that you should just get over it. It's to say that there is a lot of strength and hope even in the most difficult times. Even if we do not believe it at the time, there is a lot of scope for improvement, and a lot of people have gone through similar things and come out very happy and strong on the other end. And I think that helps us sort of contextualize what's going on with us and understand that, okay, things can get better. So very cliche, it gets better
It gets
thing,
better.
it gets
It
better.
surely does.
And my third piece of advice is, a lot of people, especially in India, like they wonder, like what can I really do, like for the community, like what can I really, like achieve, or what sort of a future can I look towards and stuff like that. Like there's a lot of unsurety, and I feel like it helps to remember that there are a lot of queer people living in India. Like you're not alone in what you're feeling, as lonely as it can feel at certain points because we've not interacted with the community yet or something like that. We are most definitely not alone. And it helps to know that there is like a huge community of people who definitely would be there for you, will be there for you. And yeah, that's about it.
It's actually very wholesome and surreal to end this conversation on a note that you are really not alone. To
Mm-hmm,
anybody who's listening to this, to anybody who's watching this,
mm-hmm,
of course, you might feel alone at so many spots and points, but there's always a community that's supporting you. There's always somebody else who's also feeling, if not the same, perhaps the similar.
mm-hmm.
And we all have our experiences. So you need to get through and you need to find yourself. And yeah, I mean, there can be as many preachy things, but at least at the end, you're not alone.
Yeah, easy, digestible statement. Great.
Easy, easy as that. It has been a wonderful time with you,
It's
Pratna.
been
Thank
lovely
you so
talking to you
much
as
for
well.
doing this with us.
My pleasure.
Thank you so
Thank
much for
you.
doing this with aidbees. To everybody watching this, do subscribe to our channel and please watch Pratna's content at Shorthead Brown Quill because it's amazing, it's relatable, and it's very, very relevant. I will see you next time for another podcast. Till then, bye bye. Enjoy. See you at 8.
Thank you. Bye bye.